Welcome to the Modern Homes Podcast. I'm Rob Clemens.
Frank Dominic.
Frank Dominic with us as always. And look, today we have kind of a busy show, Frank.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to talk a little bit. The election just ended. We're not going to go political today.
No.
But there is something that was a hot topic during the elections.
Yes.
And
very hot topic, actually.
Yes, absolutely. And I believe that we need to talk about it. We have not discussed this yet, but it's something that's going on around the country. It affects your kids. Mm-hmm. It affects the generation coming up.
It's a generational issue.
100%. And when we say generational, I mean, you can say 30 and under right now. Yeah. And that is housing affordability. Yeah. How did we get here? What's going on? And so, as always, I have a little bit of data that I pulled from online, but I think the key is that this is something that it's going to take a major overhaul and understanding at a governmental level to get to. Yeah. But let's talk about what we got here. Okay. So this is something, I found the stat today, Frank, and it says that 77% of U.S. households can't afford a median priced home, and we're talking about across the country.
Right.
Think about that. I mean, what does that mean to you? How do you, are you seeing that out there, or what's your thoughts?
I'm actually seeing it.
Yeah. You got a daughter. Is she in a home now, or is she still in the search?
She's a renter, but she's of that generation, a little nomadic. I don't think she wants to be settled down in a place just yet. So she's
I got you. So maybe more of a choice for her not to have her own home.
Definitely
yet.
A choice. Yeah.
I got you.
But the people that I'm seeing that are willing or wanting to buy, especially people who are local to this demographic here, they're going further out into your Marions, your Ainers, your Loris. They get a more affordable home there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and we could talk countrywide. They say the median priced home in 2024 is $495,750. If you're at home listening to the show and you're thinking $495,750, I guarantee you a couple of things are going to happen. Number one is if you're a retiree, hopefully that sounds doable to you.
Sure.
But I guarantee you're a college student and you're thinking about $495.
Not only that, but if you're a college student in California or New York, that number is not. That's a condo.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about median prices.
Yeah.
Right? You go around the country. Well, and that gets into that is a political discussion.
Sure.
Sometimes you see things passed on from the federal level. They're trying to regulate things that geographically you can't do.
Can't.
You remember when median? They were talking about minimum wage.
Yes.
And they said we need to have a national standard. Yeah, but if you're in Dillon, South Carolina, $10 will go a very long way. If you're in Hartford, Connecticut, that $10 isn't going far. And so companies tend to pay what they have to pay to get people.
It's market specific.
Yeah. So I agree with you. And again, we don't want to get too far down that route, but I do think this is something. So here's some more data for you, and this is more geographical to our area.
Okay.
October of 2020, single family residents in this area, and I would say, what do you think it is? But you can see my sheet from there. So I'm going to, but single family residents in 2020, October 2020, was $306,000 in this area.
I remember looking at that time frame.
306, right? And that's doable. I think a lot of people felt like.
I thought that was a fair price.
You could pull that off, right? And we're talking about average prices, single family residences. Well, zoom forward to 2024, it's at $435,726.
Which I think is a little on the low side. I think we're seeing prices that are a little higher now.
Well, and this is where
locally
they are still higher, although this is an average of the Horry County area, Horry and Georgetown County.
Sure.
Some of this is getting pulled from different directions, but there's more interesting data, and I've been following this for a while. As you know, I do a quarterly report on CarolinaBayesRealEstate.com. If you went back to 2023, the average price was $434. Okay, and there's a point of this, Frank. Think about this. 2020. It was 306. Then we had COVID happen. Things went crazy.
Escalated.
The demand went through the roof in our area.
Material prices went up.
Well, material prices went up, but
land prices went up.
But I think demand went up, and I think the demand is what created the symptom, which was all the price increases. So now as supply went down, demand went up. You jumped from 306 to 384 in 1 year. That was from 2020 to 2021. Then we got to 2023. It was 434. 2024, we went to 435. My point being, we went from a spike to a level, and really I think we'll see what happens with the elections, but there's a chance that goes down a little bit. So there has been a little bit of a correction, in case people were wondering. I think interest rates have played a role in that. I think that just in general, people have been waiting to see what's happening.
But as a realtor, I want to caution local residents who bought during the height, like I did 2 years ago, your homes are not losing value. They're just having a leveling off process of how fast they're increasing in value, I believe.
You sound like a salesman. but
in all honesty, the homes, your negotiating skill, it's more leaning towards the buyer now a little bit.
Well, there is. I mean, we talk about buyers markets and sellers markets. And in COVID time, it was the premium seller market that I remember in my career. And I was here in the housing boom of 2007. But when you look at it, what's happening now is we are shifting to a little bit of a buyer's market. You can start negotiating.
You have to market your property when you're the selling agent, the listing agent. Before you throw it up, it's sold.
Well, you go into any Lennar community, D.R. Horton community, and I look at the mass builders and what they're doing. These guys, they weren't giving away any incentives for a while, right? Now what are they doing?
Now there's seller concession pricing. There's they're buying down mortgage points,
paying down mortgages.
They're giving some free upgrades. I just had a client that got a screen porch and gutters added as part of their purchasing price.
Okay, yeah,
and then a concession on the actual price.
Absolutely. Well, that's and that's
crazy.
Kind of I mean that's the point. So, but it's still large. And to go back to your point, Frank, if you do look over a timeline, the one thing that I'm willing to bet on more than anything, more than any blue chip stock, more than any buying gold and sitting on or whatever, is to get real estate. It just always improves over a long period of time.
Again, we talked about it earlier in the previous episode. That's why I took an investment when it sold up north and bought an investment property locally here, because I think stability-wise, someone's going to make money for you. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, there is the thing, when people are panicking and selling, you should be buying, and that's kind of the thing. So anyway, there's that, and then just to put a little bow on this, condos. So I want to do the same thing with condos in the Horry, Georgetown area, which for those out of the area, Myrtle Beach is centered in Horry County. Georgetown is right near Horry County. The average price of a condo in this area in 2020 was $196,000. Wow. 196 was the average price. By the time we hit 2024, we were at $298. $100,000 in 4 years. So it's
imagine if you bought in the beginning of that run, you did a pretty good job for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the mission, right? If you could buy low and sell high, it's
or not even sell. Just if you're somebody who likes to keep buying real estate, you have equity instantly to buy another property.
Absolutely,
I've done it.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and there's investors make money making prudent decisions, but you also have to understand there's other people trying to make those decisions. So you got to work hard to find that right investment.
Like they say, no risk, no reward.
Absolutely. So Frank, I wanted to talk a little bit about this today, and I don't know if we'll have time for questions or not, to be honest with you, because there's a reason why this pricing is high, kind of countrywide. And I want to dig into that a little bit today, So, and then we can bounce questions and stuff. But so, as you know, I'm the president of the state of South Carolina Home Builders Association. We've been looking at this for years, man. We've been looking at this for years. Why are prices higher? And I did this thing. I don't think I've talked about it on the show, but I did talk about the fact that when my grandparents bought their first home, they built their first home back in the 1950 time frame, and it was $7,500.
Wow.
And give or take $500, and that was what it cost to buy a piece of property and build a home on it. And over that period of time, if you look at the inflation of things, the cost of that home well shot past where the dollar inflationary rate is. So it's not inflation that raised the price of the houses. So what happened? And this is what I like to focus on. We talked about every politician you talk to says we need more affordable housing. We need it. And then you look.
It's a campaign statement for.
Well, it's a campaign. It sounds good. Hey, I want to make sure the American dream is found. I want to make sure that people get can own a house. Right. But how do we get from a point where? And I don't have the exact data on me because we're kind of shooting on the fly. But I believe there was a data that somewhere around 15 years ago that the first time home buyer was in their late 20s. And again, I don't want to get too hard and fast on the numbers, but I'm going to be in the ballpark. It was they were in their late 20s. And now, zoom to 2024, your first-time home buyer, their first home is in their late 30s. Okay? That's
much more common now.
Much more common now. And you go, well, okay, so that's great. You're still owning a home, but you're 10 years behind where you were. So why are these homes appreciating in price? And part of the reason is because people see the investment. But the fact of the matter is the way that our current society is with building codes and local municipalities that are tapping into the building market and saying, hey, let's put another impact fee on the homes. Let's do a business license fee on the homes. And all these little things. They keep saying, we want affordable housing. And I'm talking to you, legislators. You're saying you want affordable housing, but then you're supporting impact fees. You're supporting license.
Fees are pretty, and they're heavyweight to own that property.
Well, they are heavy. And the thing is I've heard people say, well, impact fees are important. And it is true. Impact fees have a place when properly applied, okay? But the problem has usually come down to, like, where do you draw the line? And I feel like a lot of times they don't want to raise your property taxes, Frank. You're the voter, right? Yeah. You're voting right now. They don't want to raise your property taxes. So what do? You stick it to the builder. Yeah. But the builder doesn't take it on the chin. The builder does what? You mark it onto your budget line, and you say, "Here, Mr. Home Buyer."
It's like when somebody repairs your car; they're not eating the cost of the parts for your car.
Well, exactly.
They're going to roll it in. They're going to put a little bit of number on it because that's a profit.
Absolutely. Maker. Well, if you buy a bunch of product and your taxes,
it's a revenue source.
Well, okay, so exactly. So if your taxes go up, any business owner out there, if you buy cheeseburgers, I don't care, and you're paying 1% more on tax for your cheeseburgers this year, do you just go, oh well, I just lost a percentage now when I sell my stuff? No, you raise the price of what you're paying for the taxes. Well, that's happening with homes.
Can you flesh out, I'm aware of it, you're aware of it, we're in this industry, but for the layman out there, describe an impact fee. Clarify that.
An impact fee, I love talking about this because in the building industry, we tend to villainize impact fees. But I want you to understand something. That's kind of, it's almost like anything else in life. If you don't truly understand something, it's easy to villainize something. We do it because we fear what could happen if you just start adopting impact fees across the board. But in essence, I'm going to describe this in layman's terms. If you are in a community with 100 people, okay, just 100-person community. Picture that in your head. And then say, well, we've got a little building department for those people. We got a little fire department, a police station. We have roads. We have a utility that will handle water and sewer for that. And we have just enough to handle those 100 people. Somebody comes in and says, well, I'm going to build 1,000 homes right next to it, okay? So now all of a sudden, you're looking at it and going, well, wait a minute. Our water and sewer can't handle
based on 100 people.
Our fire department, and I'm using an extreme
No, but
case.
you definitely. That's why I think this was worth clarifying because I know, but that's something people don't take in consideration.
All right. So the way an impact fee is designed to work, and I'm talking about the state of South Carolina in particular, is the state law actually says as long as you can quantify that these impact fees are truly for the impact on your community. So if you have to size up the facility, the water and sewer facility, to handle that extra load, if you have to hire extra personnel to handle that extra police department, I mean, I'm using examples, then that is an impact fee used well. But our state law also says things like that you can't use it to carte blanche, just make improvements to the existing facility. So just because you want a new...
like you said, there has to be an impact. It has to have a direct relationship.
Right. If you wanted new plumbing fixtures in your building, you couldn't do that with the impact fee, right? Okay, so there's that. And then, but what has happened and what has tended to happen is people have started using an impact fee for more than an impact fee, right? Because the way an impact fee is supposed to work is you're supposed to earmark certain parts of that for what you're doing. And you're supposed to be able to go back and look at a budget sheet and say, okay, well, they used that fee properly. But if you get the wrong group of legislation that says, hey, you know what, let's just make it a different kind of impact. They're just affecting our community. Let's stick it to them a little bit harder. there is a fear that some, municipalities could use it as a moratorium on building.
Is that a zoning board decision?
Not so much a zoning board, because the zoning board couldn't just make a carte blanche decision like that.
To make sure they're enforced.
Well, no, it's more about you would have to have a council that would get together. They would have to vote on this. They'd have to have readings, and there's a whole process which, for the intents of this conversation, really don't really apply as much. But the bigger point is where do you stop that? How do you stop that? And what is to stop a community from saying, Frank, well, you know what? I think there's enough homes out here. Let's put a $30,000 impact home building. Yeah, okay. Then what happens?
Then you got to spread out how many homes in that property. That's a nice big chunk.
Yeah, well,
my first exposure to impact fees were local, and it was in the Little River area. It was a deal that didn't come to fruition, but a developer was looking at some land, and they were going to build 5 homes on it. And they were going to get hit with an impact fee for, like you said, water usage, public water, sewer, that kind of thing. And they were like, yeah. And it became not an attractive issue, because then you got to figure, okay, I'm going to buy this land. I have to make my money back for that purchase, plus build the homes, make my money back from the expense of that. Then you're throwing that in, and they did the math, and it didn't work out.
It didn't make it. Well, here's another thing that happens, and this is my plea to anybody, and again, this could be a 5-hour conversation, and we're going to condense it down into this 30-minute show, but I'll hit a couple of high points with you. One of them being that people will decide where they're going to go based on the cost sometimes.
Sure. So
these municipalities, if they really support affordable housing, you got to look at that as a 360 sphere, and you have to say, well, how do we go about that? I heard a case, and I'm using an extreme one. I'm not even going to name the municipality, but it's close to us. It's within a 30-minute drive of where you and I sit right now. I had a builder who went to try to pull permits for building a home for a lady and on her lot in her city, and we're talking about the American dream. I own a lot.
I purchased a lot.
Build my home on there.
Build my own home on it.
So he goes to the building department and says, "Hey, I'd like to pull building permits." And they said, "Well, you need to go get your business license fee." For those of you at home who don't know, if you're going to go build a home in a community, a lot of times you have to have a business license in that community as well. So he says, "Okay, what's the business license cost?" And they applied a formula to it, and on this $400,000 house or so, he said the business license fee ended up being something like $30,000 or $40,000. It was something ungodly.
Wow.
And that's the business license fee. So he said, well,
wow.
Time out. Like, who's going to pay for that?
Right.
Well, the homeowner's thinking, well, why would I have to pay
I own
that
the
kind
land.
of money? Right. And we in the building.
And I'm not opening a business. I'm building a home.
Exactly. So these are the kinds of things. So again, when we talk about we want more affordable housing, how do you do it? Well, you don't do it through crazy fees on business licenses, crazy building energy codes. Let's go building energy codes. So
good and bad?
Well, good and bad. Look, I do believe we have to build a more efficient house.
100%.
But, when you look at what kind of energy efficiency levels are being required, that's a building code that can raise your price extremely.
Significantly, for sure.
Significantly, as these code increases go up. So again, I don't want to focus the whole show on the negative. It sounds like I'm going negative. But what I'm getting at is, how did we get here? This is the thing. And we need to talk about it. You got to start at the grassroots level.
You folks at home, viewers, we could sit here like we do week after week and talk about things that are ancillary to the business or very common, but this is something that not a lot of builders or realtors are going to break down for you, and I think it's really important that that's what we're here for. We always talk about education is the most important thing we do.
I just want to bring value to people. You hear a lot of things out there, and they can be on the surface level, and you just go, oh, well, why are house prices going up? And people act like it's a magic trick. Like, why is it going up? And why are we trying to hold
abracadabra?
Yeah. And the truth is there's an actual amount of things, and all you got to do is look at the budget line item, and I assure you that your typical builder out there isn't getting rich doing this, but it goes down to that.
Well, I always am reminded about a conversation we had on the show, and you and I had when I sat down and talked to you about becoming a realtor, and that was when you were talking about ICF construction, and you sat in a home that had so many benefits to it, and you heard realtor after realtor come and go, look at the granite countertops, aren't these cabinets just really nice?
Yeah.
And they are nice features, bar none. But as impactful for the development of that home and the value of that home, maybe not.
It's tricky, man. It's very tricky. You know, I get it. It's almost like when you go to a store and they have what they call a loss leader.
Oh,
you know, in marketing they call it a loss leader. It's that thing that attracts you in there, maybe a great price that attracts you in, and then you get in and you're like, okay, well, let's hit you with the real stuff now. That's kind of like the granite tops in a house, man. They got my attention, and the goal is for the real stuff to be the thing, the substance stuff to be out there, but you have to have them both. I mean, I guess that's the thing. Yeah. Let's take a quick break and we'll come right back.
Break down that licensing fee. Kind of how does that come about where that lady owned that land and she's getting hit with that heavy fee? What was the license fee encompassing?
You know, it's interesting. You know, anytime you scale something on a small scale, it might work, and then you get on a big scale and it doesn't work. Let me use an example. If we said that, you know, if you're looking at a small enough basis, if you said somebody's selling, you know, $1,000 worth of stuff a day. I used to work in retail in a small retail store, and sometimes $1,000 a day would be a great day for them.
Depends on the business.
Yeah, and if you applied on that kind of a thing, you said, well, let's charge them and I'm going to use round numbers here. Let's charge them a 4% business license fee. You know, so per day, maybe they're paying $40 license fee per day, and
right.
You know, I'm using an example. Maybe that doesn't feel that heavy, but then you go into a company that sells a $100,000 car, right? And you apply the same business license fee, and you say, well, okay, so I sell one car, and now doing that math, you're going, that's a lot. That's a lot to build into somebody. And as you start scaling up the number, you go, well, wait a minute, it felt okay at a small number, but this does not feel good at a big number. Good. So what happens is a lot of times, most of these municipalities, and of course I don't work in state government, I don't work in local government, so if you are one and you love to come on the show, we welcome you to come on the show. We can have this discussion. I'd love to. But the deal is normally it comes down to, we've got things we have to pay for in this city. We have to pay for street lights. We have to pay for maybe if you have private roads, striping the streets. Resurfacing them. You have costs. You have police departments. You have things. So they're going to use these license fees and say, well, let's make sure that we're apportioning things so that we can afford things and so on and so forth. The problem is at what point, Frank, do you unduly hit any one area for their portion of the pay? Right. And I feel like that sometimes we go to the low-hanging fruit. You know, who's hard to dip into the well? Who's hard? The people that are going to be, you know, they're your constituents, people that you're seeing every day when you go to the grocery store. Hey, I raised your taxes. I've never heard politicians go, this year I raised your taxes. They don't talk like that.
Nobody says that.
But
they do though.
But they do like to talk about lowering taxes. But if you're going to lower it and you're not lowering your expenses, you got to come from somewhere.
Everybody runs on a tax cut.
Right. So what do? Well, we look at it and we say, you know, who's kind of unspoken for it? It's the guy who doesn't live here yet. And so and it kind of gets lost on the dollar figure. You go, well, let's just hit them up when they're building the home, okay? You know, and then there's a logic to it. I get there's logic. You know, there's an impact. Now, we in the Builders Association, we like to flip that. We say that vacant piece of land, how much property tax are you paying on that vacant piece of land? How much? It's not much. No. Most municipalities on a vacant piece of land, most states, it's going to be a fairly low taxation. What happens when you build a $500,000 property on there?
Goes up pretty sharply.
Okay. So there's some pretty good property taxes. Hey, guess what? There's a couple of stats I've got for you. Every time we build a home, the statistic is we've created about 4 full-time jobs. What? Roughly 4 it's about
each home.
3.8. It's the equivalent of about 3.8 homes are full-time jobs per home.
I need to sell more homes.
Right. Well, there you go. So we're putting people to work when we're building homes, right? Yeah. We're buying materials, which we're paying proper sales taxes on. Correct. We're putting a guy at work at the mortgage lender, and they're lending and they're paying. So the point is you don't have to dip all into it when you're building the home. You can say, look, there's a reward in building the home that will help thrive in the community. Yeah. Going kind of strong on that, but you know where I'm coming from. I mean,
it's strong, but it's true.
Yeah, you know, it's something we have to talk about.
Yeah. Well, you said also, we touched earlier, the affordability of homes. How much is the energy efficiency ratings, different building regulations and requirements, how much is that impacting from a builder standpoint, increase in price?
Well, but to answer that question, I want to talk about the genesis of the question. And this is almost like when you got back to, you remember when Teddy Roosevelt, you remember when he was around? You remember back when, of course you can
I voted for him.
It was great. It was a great vote back in 1912 or whatever year it was. But when he came in, he saw there was a problem with companies were maybe unfairly working the common man, and so we came up with rules to protect the common man. Hey, let's have some standards. Let's have some standards with standard work weeks and so forth. Well, it's the same thing with homes. We don't want to be building homes that are going to fall down. We don't want to be building homes that are inefficient to heat and cool and so forth. So they came up with these standards, and they said, let's have building codes and let's have energy codes, and let's make sure that we're building a home that's going to be more responsible to the environment. And Frank, I love that, man. At Carolina Bays, we have a sustainability pledge. I believe in this.
Absolutely.
But the problem is where do you take it too far? So the way that it works with the building codes it's a standard that says that you can't use this rating of HVAC. You need to use this rating, minimum.
Or higher.
A little bit higher, so you get better energy bills. You can't use the window without the low E and the bad U factors. You need to use this window, and it's because it's going to insulate better. It's going to keep out solar heat gain better, and so on and so forth. And what happens is, though, we tend to raise the bar every year. And when we talk about housing affordability, theme of the show today, well, what happens when, the current building code, we deem it's pretty solid, but, let's raise the bar a little bit more, and that somebody's paying for that. It's the end user. So
sure it is.
I'm going to go back to the beginning. The goal is we as a country want to use less of energy. We want to have less emissions, and that's a goal.
Right.
But what would you do if I said to you, well, Frank, we can do that, and what I'm going to propose to you is that everybody, your neighbors, your family, your friends, why don't you spend $25,000 extra this year and we're going to upgrade your house? How would you feel?
I'm going to pass right now.
You're going to pass right now.
Which the common man will.
Well, and the common man will, because if you can't afford a home in the first place, there's nothing to get energy efficient about. So my point being that what we looked at is we said, why don't we just make a standard where let's adopt the best, most affordable standards that have the most bang for your buck, if you will. Sure. And then let's take some of the other ones and let's make those incentivized things that you could upgrade. Why not make it where if you put an extra R20 in your attic, we could give you an incentive for that. What's wrong with that, Frank? Right? Yeah. So, and again, I'm not running for a seat right now, but what I'm trying to say is, when you mandate these upgrades, in my belief,
it's a different angle.
Right, it's a different angle, and what's going to happen is people are going to pivot and they're going to take advantage of the mandations. But when you make it where that we have a good solid standard, and then we say, look, we'll incentivize you to do better.
Well, you used the phrase "bang for a buck," and that everybody's looking for that on some level.
Yeah.
Even your marquee buyers that are buying in posh neighborhoods, we will call it.
Sure.
Say somebody's buying a high-end neighborhood, they're still not going to overpay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so let's go another route. I used an example a minute ago. I'm going to use another example. What if I told you, Frank, I've got an energy efficiency improvement you can do. It's going to cost you $10,000, but you're going to get a 20% ROI over the next 5 years. What would you do?
I would do it.
I think you'd do it in a heartbeat. You go, well, that's great. All right, so if I can spend...
You initiated a solution and a value incentive.
Okay, fair enough, and that's what a good salesperson should do. So let me finish another thought. Okay, and I'm going to make some round numbers here to make it easy. So if I said, you spend $10,000 and I'm going to show you a 20% ROI over the next few years. And you're like, man, I love that.
I'm on that.
And then I say, okay, now you could spend another $10,000 and I'm going to show you another 2% ROI on that.
Not on that.
You're not excited. Well, and that's
see how quick that was, folks?
Well, and that's my point. It's like, that's kind of how I feel about some of this stuff. We've got to look at it, and we've got to start looking at what is the benefit of this thing.
If you could have bundled it in all at one time and said, you a 10%, I'm showing you a 22% increase, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
That sounds nice, right?
Yeah, right.
Not realizing the other 2% is...
It's good info. I was talking to an energy efficiency contractor the other day, and he told me just that. He was doing spray foam insulation, and he had mentioned that if he did so many inches for about X amount of dollars, he said he's going to be able to show this customer a 50% improvement.
Which is phenomenal.
And he said, but if he did another inch, which was going to cost him a good bit of money, he was going to basically be able to show him just a hair of improvement over that. And he said, so why would I do the extra amount? Well, it's kind of a good question, right? So that's
But if it's mandated, he would do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then overall, they're showing a 51%.
Well, and then as things tend to go, when it's mandated, all of a sudden it's not a value proposition anymore. Now you just got to do it. So now everybody gets in the business, and maybe
term we like to use in the business. It takes the sexiness off it.
Well, it sure does.
It's not exciting to say I have to do something.
Right. So and to tie up that theme there, we're bringing sexy back to the building industry. Anyway, but no, those are those are some good questions, Frank. And I think this is a deep topic, and I feel like I talked a lot today. But the idea was,
I think it's very important now.
well, we got to talk about this, and really my goal is I'd like to go in and speak to a group of students at Coastal Carolina and say, you guys, you can go out and be entrepreneurs. This is the greatest country in the world. You can go be an entrepreneur.
But I also think you expanding on this for the viewers is back to your core value of why Carolina Bays. We talk about it all the time. Why are we who we are, and why should somebody choose our company? We're bringing this kind of value.
Well, yeah, it's a value. You got to understand what you're doing. You got to understand why you're buying, and look. At the end of the day, I do believe this. There was a efficiency study shown at one point, and this is a little bit different topic. We're talking about workforce development, lack of workers in this industry. But there's a study done by Klein Tools, and it's called Dark by 2050. Check this out. If you're at home, check it out on Google.
Klein Tools, solid company.
Klein
I
Tools.
used to sell Klein Tools back in the day.
Did you really?
Yes,
No, man. All right.
Part of a product offering.
Man, that's a story I haven't heard yet. Okay, well, we're talking about that sometime. But Klein Tools did this study, and it's called Dark by 2050. And what they were doing is they saw the declining amount of people getting into the construction industry, and they saw the increasing amount of population. People are living longer, where we are growing as a population. And they said if we don't get more people into the industry, then we're going to have points where we can't produce enough power to keep the whole country lit up and
totally
electric.
agree with that.
Now, here's the thing, okay? The reason I mention that at this very moment is that we have to understand there's a point and a counterpoint of everything. The way I look at that study is that if we don't do something, who will have power? The richest, the people with the most money. But all I hear about is a housing affordability. All I hear about is get people into a home, give people an opportunity to own their own home. But if we don't do something and give these people a chance to move into their own home, to own something, you take away part of the American spirit.
To further that point, to one of the fastest growing population of six-figure earners are tradesmen.
Well, okay, and that's going a route that get into the building industry. But to go back to the point is, this country, it was founded on the ability to start your own business, to start your own life, to have prosperity, to own your own land, to own your own property, to own your own home. And if we start phasing it out to the point where, let's go back to that stat we said at the beginning, 77% of U.S. households can't afford a median-priced home. There are other stats that show every time a home goes up $1,000 in value, that in this state that you X out thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people from affording a home. So my question to you is, what do we do about it? We understand what the problem is. We start working from there, and we build a better tomorrow.
Totally agree.
We owe it to everybody. So, all right, Frank, any other things? We're getting to the back end of the show.
Pretty solid on that.
Pretty solid, okay. What are you going to do with the rest of your week?
I have a client flying in from the West Coast, and we're going to look at a bunch of homes.
Man, West Coast? Oh, West Coast. Why does somebody come from the West Coast all the way over to the East Coast thinking about buying?
Change of scenery, weather. They're looking for a single family home. They were originally East Coasters, Northeast.
Okay.
They went out west for family.
Yeah.
Now they do not have to be here anymore. They want to. They're not sure this is the destination, but I'm going to try to see if we can find them a destination here in South Carolina.
Well, it is a thing. I mean, I think this is obviously one of the greatest incoming states in the country. I met a lady from up in the Midwest recently. I asked, why are you moving to LA? How do you pick of all states to come down to? She said, I've been coming here for years. I love the weather. I love the beach.
To me, it's weather, and it's a friendly area.
We always hear that, the friendly area.
Everybody hears from somewhere else for the most part, generally. You meet, in my band, my drummer's a local guy, but the other three of us are from somewhere else.
Where are your other band members from?
I'm from Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland.
My singer's from Massachusetts, and my bass player's from Maine. So we all came from the Northeast.
Okay. Well, you get at least two of them. Well, at least one of them is like, Frank, get the car. Pull it around.
We're going to the bar.
Is Gary coming to play? I love the way Gary turns into Gary. Yeah. Anyway, I have some in-laws from that area. But all right, well, everybody, we appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you got something off of today's show. And by the way, if you heard something interesting to you, feel free to let us know your thoughts. Come on the show. We'd love to have a good guest on here. And so
if you're in any of the industries we describe on the show, reach out.
Hey, look, this is not a one-way thing. We love to hear another point whenever people have the chance. So anyway, well, it's been a good show, Frank. I appreciate it. Signing off with Robin and Frank on the Modern Homes Podcast. We'll see you next week.